Hi everyone, Nick Elsmore from Security Colony here. Thanks for joining us again. Before I get started, please do take the opportunity to jump onto www.securitycolony.com and follow the links to register for a free Security Colony account if you haven't already. It only requires an email address and a password, and you'll get access to some fantastic resources. Today we're going to be talking about the Nist Cybersecurity Framework, or the CSF as it's known. Now, Nist, for those in Australia, is the US National Institute of Standards and Technology. Although it's an American standard-setting body, they have produced some exceptional information security resources, and the Nist CSF itself was actually recognised by our regulator, ASIC, in their cybersecurity guidance for businesses as being a good place to start for assessing maturity. Now, the important thing to recognise about the Nist cybersecurity framework is that it's not a standard, it's not a regulation. So it's quite different to things like PCI DSS, which looks at credit card data security, at SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley, or even the ISO suite of standards like 27001. The cybersecurity framework is genuinely a framework, and there are actually some really useful mappings that look at how each of the controls in each of the segments within the CSF actually map across to the other standards and regulations that exist around the world. The core of the Nist cybersecurity framework are the 5 domains that make it up. Now, those 5 domains are identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Within each of these domains, there are then a series of categories and subcategories that lay out the individual controls or elements that an organisation should implement to address each of these domains. The key thing to remember with the Nist cybersecurity framework is that this isn't intended to be a compliance type standard. It has mappings, and they're available from the Nist cybersecurity website. There are mappings to ISO, to COBIT, and to other standards. And on our website, the Security Colony as well, there are some Excel spreadsheets that we use for completing security assessments against the CSF that include mappings to the ISO standard as well. From our perspective, the real value in the Nist cybersecurity framework is in using it for reporting, particularly for board reporting. Because this approach of having these 5 domains lends itself to being really easily understood in terms of how the organisation's maturity varies across the different areas. I'll show you a slide that we use to illustrate the 5 domains and maturity across the 5 domains when we're writing board reports for our clients. What you'll see on this slide is that there's a dial for each of the domains of the Nist cybersecurity framework. And on that dial is indicated the current state and the target state, given a score out of 100, which is effectively having fully implemented all of the controls documented in the CSF. Now, if you're like most organisations, what you're going to find is something a bit like this. If you're looking at a score of 100, you're likely to find identify is an area where there's a reasonable degree of maturity, but certainly not complete coverage. You're likely to find that protect is an area where you have a degree of strength. Detect is likely to be weak, respond is likely to be weak, and recover is likely to be somewhere in the middle. And generally, this reflects the investment patterns of organisations in cybersecurity over the last many years. The reality is that going back 10, 15 years, most, if not all, of the investment in cybersecurity was around protection-driven controls. And certainly still, a lot of infrastructure spend and a lot of other security spend is based on protecting against attacks. How we've seen the industry change over the last few years has really been to evolve the focus into looking at detection and response. And the way that's been described is the change in focus to look at resilience. The concept of resilience is simply that an organisation needs to expect that they're going to be subject to attack and build in mechanisms to detect those attacks and respond to them effectively, and ideally to be able to continue operating while the attack is taking place. Recover really covers areas around business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning, which for many organisations is something that has been a focus over the last few years, so is an area that has a degree of maturity. The last domain to talk about, identify, which of course is the first domain, is really about how well you understand your organisation, whether you know the assets that exist, whether you know where they are, whether you know the risks they're exposed to. This is where Mike Burgess's 5 No's of security really fits in. Now, because this isn't a compliance requirement, because it actually sits above and outside any of the other security standards or compliance obligations that your organization has, it's actually a really effective way at measuring your security maturity and representing it in a nice way that senior management and the board can understand. That's been a really quick summary of the Nist cybersecurity framework. Of course, the whole document and all the associated materials are available at the nist.gov website, and we certainly recommend that you check it out. We also have some great resources available on the Security Colony portal, particularly some tools for completing some of these assessments and being able to generate some of the board reports based on the Nist cybersecurity framework. If you haven't yet, please do take the opportunity to set up an account at Security Colony. At www.securitycolony.com, you'll find the links to register. It's free, and with the enhanced sign-up process, all it requires is an email address and a password. I hope to see you in the colony.